today we brought his little toy.
Yeah, we brought his little
toy.
Who's a good boy? What's your little toy?
There's your little toy, Milo. It was like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
There you go. You got
Good
your
boy.
little toy.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Charlie. And there's little Milo.
And welcome to Outsmarting the Shadows, where we help you survive horror movies.
Yes, we do.
And today, we are helping you survive not just a horror movie, but a horror series.
Yeah, we're changing it up a little bit today.
Yeah, we're changing it up because The Fall of the House of Usher just came out this morning at 3 a.m.
Yes, it did.
Yes, or was it yesterday morning at 3 a.m.?
It was, no, 3 a.m.
It was
today. Yes.
So we watched the first episode yesterday at 3, or today at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
It feels so long ago.
Right, it does.
It does.
It was recording, watch a show, then edit, then watch a show. Now we're recording again.
It's a lot. And then we just watched the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, episode 2 and 3.
Yes, so we watched 1, 2, and 3. And we are going to help you survive, help you navigate through the amazingness that is The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah, in this one, I was a little stumped because it kind of like starts a little in the first episode. Okay, I see. There's like horror elements to it. You know, there's kind of like ghosts and stuff. So I wasn't all that sure. What tips could we give out to survive in this show?
So I think I'm going to take point on this because the way that you have to look at this is from the perspective of Edgar Allan Poe's writing. And Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Fall of the House of Usher in 1839.
Okay.
It was a short story. It was about 12 pages long.
Okay.
And it centers around a gentleman named Roderick Usher.
Okay.
And an unnamed narrator who is a childhood friend who he invites over to just discuss his life.
Right off the bat, then, the show changes some things.
The show has changed.
It's still the same name of the same main character.
Yes, which I love. I love that they've kept a lot of the same elements that Edgar Allan Poe really talks about. In fact, I want to read a passage from Edgar Allan Poe because what we're surviving here is not just the specific scenario, but the concepts. We're surviving
Concepts of fear?
Yes. It really has to do with fear and insanity and how do you navigate through situations that you have no explanation for.
I see.
And you have no control over. So we're going to go into spoiler warning because...
Spoiler.
Yes. So...
At least spoiler in this episode for the first 3 episodes.
For the first 3 episodes, we highly, highly recommend that you go to Netflix right now and you watch the first 3 episodes of The Fall of the House of Usher.
Or watch all of them.
Or watch all of them. I mean...
It's 8 episodes in total. So you might not...
You
might not want to binge 8 episodes at once.
Right. I mean, yes. But... if you're going to binge it, I do recommend you watch the first 3, come back, talk to us, give us some comments, and then tomorrow we'll do the next 3.
Yes.
And then you can watch those, and that way we can kind of watch together.
And then we do the final 2.
Yes, and then we do the final 2 together. So, spoiler warning, and you did it. You came back.
You just watched it.
You just watched it. So, sometimes you might love it, you might hate it. I always say... even if you don't like the first episode, you got to give it a couple of episodes.
Yeah, the first episode, I was kind of like, is this something we really want to do? Do we want to, just do this show? It seems kind of random.
Really?
I knew nothing. I know nothing of Edgar Allan Poe. All I know about him is he has something to do with crows.
Oh my
something
God.
about crows. There's a lot of crows when his stuff comes up. In fact, in the first episode, there's a crow right at the end.
It's true.
So I was like, I don't know. It has some creepy elements, although in this show, everything is a jump scare. They are all jump scares so far.
Well, so there's 2 or 3 different kinds of fear and scare in this kind of show. So when we traditionally talk about horror movies, we're talking about the fear of that specific thing. And most horror movies, in my experience, don't linger with you. Like you're not, unless maybe you're scared of like, oh my God, I got to run to the bathroom and it's really dark and I'm thinking about that zombie creature and like that's scary. But it's not like it sits with you.
Yeah, only a couple of horror movies have ever sat with me. One of them is Hereditary
Yes.
and The Annabelle. One scene in the Annabelle film, which I'm not gonna get into. When we do that
Yes,
movie, we'll
we'll
get into
do
that.
both those movies
Those are two movies that I can think off the top of my head
that
that
kind of
have
scared you.
that stayed with me.
I
That
remember.
I was like, oh yeah, that was creepy.
We'll talk about that later too, but I am going to note that when we watch Hereditary,
Uh-huh.
you were like running to the back and you were like, I'm scared. And I was so flabbergasted because you've never had that
Yeah,
experience
and that was
before.
the second time I watched it. You know, I watched it in the movie. I watched it in the AMC theater by myself. I remember it was opening night. I think it was a Friday. I went to the last showing at like 10 or 12,
Oh my God, how
and I watched it.
horrifying.
And then I lived by myself in the apartment.
Oh,
And
buddy.
I was like, that was scary.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
I'm
I remember I
glad.
slept with all the lights on. You know,
Yeah.
I pay electricity. I don't mind.
Right. Okay, well, so I am a huge, huge fan of a lot of literature, Edgar Allan Poe being one of them. And something that he does extremely well is create a sense of dread.
Mm,
Well, I wouldn't describe it as dread. I would describe it as unease,
mm.
where there's like just something wrong. And in this one, in the story, honestly, it's about the house is crumbling around them.
Mm.
And in this show, they do it in two really great ways. The first one is in the childhood home that the detective goes in, or not the detective, that the prosecutor goes in to meet Roderick Usher. It's literally crumbling just like in the story from Edgar Allan Poe.
But is it crumbling during the show? Because when he gets there, it's already really dilapidated.
Exactly, but that's what I mean.
Okay.
It's disintegrated. Like, it clearly hasn't been maintained.
Mhm.
There's water damage. Like, it doesn't, when you first see it, you're like, that doesn't look safe to go into. So that it creates that sense of unease that way. And then the second way is the fall of the House of Usher in what the show does is also about a wealthy, uber wealthy family that are emotionally unstable.
Yeah, this is not even the 1%. This is the 1% of the 1%. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the people that control, pharmaceutical companies and basically the world.
They create lobbyists.
Sidelines.
Yeah. So and that is an interesting take on the concept of fear and insanity. And I love the concept that I got from this, that at a certain point, when you're so wealthy and you're so detached from the day-to-day living and existing that happens with humanity, there's no way to describe it other than insane.
Mm.
That is insanity. Like Perry, one of the youngest Usher child who dies first in the second episode.
Yeah. So how we go about it is kind of like in the first episode, we start off where all his children are dead.
Yes.
Which are 6, right?
There are 6 children dead, but we're at the funeral of 3.
Oh, of 3. Okay.
Yes, we're at the funeral of 3.
The last 3.
The last 3 that died, and then we flash back pretty quickly to Roderick and Madeline, his sister's childhood, and their mother, and this very sad story of a woman who works as a secretary for a man who she has slept with, and she had 2 children with him. That's the implication.
That's the implication. They still until episode 3 they haven't said
they haven't disclosed it.
They haven't disclosed it outright that's what happened.
Right, but they've implied it, and she never asked anything of him.
Yeah.
She, in fact, stopped working for him.
Because she got sick.
And then she refused to go to the hospital. And she was extremely religious, and then refused medicine.
Yeah, because of her religion, it was like, oh, I can't
soil my body.
With medicine.
Yeah. And then her, Madeline and Roderick as children, they watch their mother suffer. They even go to their father's home to see if he can... Alleged father's home, to see if he can convince her to take medicine, or go to the doctor at least. And he's like, get out of here. I don't care. Who are you?
Vamos.
Right.
Vamos.
Get out of here.
Get out of here.
Vamos.
Vamos. We don't want you here.
We don't want you kinds.
Yeah, you're poor.
Right.
We don't want the poor.
Right. So he's awful. And that shapes Roderick's attention to his children later. But when he and Madeline go home, they watch their mother suffer a little longer, and then they think she's died. and they're kids. They
Because
don't.
she did die.
No.
No?
Well, in Edgar Allan Poe's story, there is a theme where people are accidentally buried alive.
Oh, because in this story, it looked like she was an undead.
Right.
Like it was a zombie, her face was all messed up.
Well, it looks like that, but the idea from Edgar Allan Poe, at least, is that they've buried their mother and she's not dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and how horrifying would that be to both be buried alive and to know the insanity of knowing that you've buried your loved one alive. And in the story that Edgar Allan Poe writes, he can hear his sister, who he's buried alive, tapping and trying to get out when they think she's died.
But it was her mother.
In the show, it's his mother.
Oh.
But in the story, it's his sister.
His sister. Oh, okay.
And he can hear it, and he tries to ignore it because he can't tell. He's like, if she's alive, I don't want to face that I've done this. If she's not alive, then she's undead, and I don't want her coming back to haunt me.
I see.
And it's sort of the story of the house too, and like, what if it's the house? It's very interesting. So,
but from that regards, they veered off.
They did
quite a lot from the original story.
Unless he's going to bury his sister alive later.
I mean, it could happen.
I doubt it.
We're still on episode 3.
She seems really together, his sister.
Yeah, she's on a mission, and she's always been on a mission.
But you know what?
To rule the world.
She's on a mission to recreate humanity in the form of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
What she wants to live forever by allowing herself to live on as a machine. And I wonder, my theory is that she might die, but not really die, and maybe somebody buries her alive, but she's still around as a machine. Like maybe she accomplishes her goal.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So, in terms of being buried alive, there's a survival tip here.
Yes, and we saw this survival tip in The Nun, the first one. You just have a little bell, right, with a little string, and you tie that little string to the person that's, in the coffin. That way they can pull on that little bell, and people on the outside they know, oh, somebody who's dead wasn't dead is buried there.
So
used to be a thing.
Every single family member that unfortunately meets a tragic end, they're going to have to install a bell.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that kid, his skin melted away. There's no way that kid is alive.
Perry.
Yeah, Perry. His skin got all up to his muscles. Okay?
Poor
There's
Perry.
no amount of just the pain alone will make you just pass out.
Well,
but what was your tip? That's what I thought you were going to say.
That's not what I was going to say, because
that is my tip for staying alive.
But that's not really a way to survive being buried alive. That's a way to use the tools that someone happened to give you. But what if they didn't give you that?
Well, then you're shit out of luck. Sucks to be you.
It does suck to be you if you're buried alive. My God, it's like that's a really real fear of. I don't want to be buried alive.
Yeah, like that movie from Ryan Reynolds. We should get to that movie.
I don't want to watch that movie. I don't like it.
Is it Buried or Buried Alive? Something like that?
Yeah, it's like Buried.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
You could watch that one.
So, but as a child, I don't think that we could hold you to this standard. But definitely, if you're going to bury someone, check their pulse.
Right?
Like, sit there.
Sit there, right?
Or what did
Put
you
a little machine, a little pressure, a little blood pressure machine,
A sphygomatometer?
Yeah, that too.
That's what the technical term for that is called.
Yeah.
A blood pressure cuff is called a sphygomatometer.
There you go. You heard it here first.
So, so those kids, usually there's also a 3-day mourning period when somebody dies. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the number one reason is, what if the person is alive before you bury them? There's a reason why you don't bury them for 3 days.
Oh, okay.
But you actually said that when we were watching this episode. I'm surprised you don't remember.
No, I said it because Jesus Christ came back to life on the 3rd day.
Oh, interesting.
It's because of, Christianity. Not because I know Christianity. It's because of all the horror films we've watched. That is,
that's right. That was in The Nun, too.
We've watched a lot of religious horror movies, and that's, they harp on that, Jesus Christ died, and then on the third day, he came back to life. That's why,
Interesting.
demons and monsters kind of like the third day to mock him, and then they knock 3 times. At
forgot all
3 a.m.
about
in the morning, or the lights flicker 3 times.
Oh,
That's
right.
kind of that was the main theme in the first Conjuring.
It was the main
I
thing.
mean, he throws it out there,
Right.
but it's also talked in other movies, horror, religious horror movies.
That is true. I
That is
didn't even think
why I said it.
Oh, okay. Well, in a lot of cultures, you wait 3 days to bury a body to both mourn, to give people the opportunity to say goodbye, and to make sure that they're not still alive.
Yeah.
So, in this scenario, check if they're alive. If you are buried alive, there are a lot of like technical things that people can advise you on how to survive. And please don't take what we say as being technical.
Yeah,
we are not
no
experts,
professionals. We're
right?
here just to tell you how you would survive a hypothetical situation where you're in a horror movie.
Right.
And in this case, a horror show.
Right. So I would recommend just what she did. Wait until it's raining, because then the soil is easier to dig through. And thankfully, these kids didn't bury her very deep.
They weren't all that good.
No.
They just used old raggedy wood from a shed that they had.
Right? I mean, granted, that coffin was perfect.
Yeah. No, not the coffin. The rectangular hole that they dug in that ground.
Oh, right.
No kids are gonna dig that hole.
That's true.
That was. I mean, it wasn't all that deep. It was like maybe a couple of
4
inches.
feet.
I mean, from the top of the coffin to the
it was like
almost
a foot.
Yeah, it was almost flush to the surface.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're buried alive, I would say conserve oxygen.
Yeah.
Don't freak out. Attempt to use your legs and your knees to maybe break open anything you can.
I don't know how easy or hard that would be.
I don't know.
Maybe the tip is just don't get buried alive.
Yeah.
But if you wait 3 days, won't you start to swell up and start rotting by day 2?
Not necessarily.
No?
No, it depends on the environment, obviously.
Like
in Florida. No, let's not do that here.
Right? Second day is like, I think he's gone. They are done. They're starting to swell.
Well, I mean, I was surprised that they buried her when she wasn't cold and rigor mortis.
Yeah.
That would be a clear indication someone is dead.
How did they carry her?
Oof.
Because she looked like, they looked like really raggedy children.
Yeah, they weren't. It's
not that easy to, let's say, I don't know, she weighed 170 pounds.
Yeah.
You think that, I'm going to carry 170 pounds by myself. It's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
No, it's not.
Just pick up a 50-pound bag of feed.
Right?
Of chicken food.
Or a 45.
That's what I do all the time.
Or a 45-pound weight. Just a plate. Just a 45-pound weight plate. And then take that 45, put it on the other side, and then put an Olympic bar and just try to squat it.
Woo! That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a big ask of our audience.
It's not. Then you'll see like, this is not that easy.
All right. So let's get back to some of the themes here.
Yes.
So I am going to read part of this. It's just a little quote.
Okay. From the story? It
is from the story, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a segment that it really talks about the language used in Edgar Allan Poe and some of the themes that are evoked, that we can talk about how one might survive some of these concepts.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say unsufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of that half pleasurable, because poetic sentiment with which the mind usually receives even the sternest natural images of the desolate or terrible. So this was the narrator's description as he's going into the house of Roderick Usher. And the house has a really big theme in the story where the house is kind of like a character in and of itself. And I took that, I think the showrunners in this took that to mean that they wanted the house to be a character. They wanted the family of the Ushers to be bigger than just a physical object. And I think that's why they made the family into this big billionaire monopoly, as though the concept of this family and the house of Usher is a big thing.
Yeah, it's they are untouchable. They are
Yeah.
above the law. They can do whatever they want. And
Yes.
there's going to be no consequences. As you can see from the prosecutor, that he's basically been after them way before he
Since
was.
the 1970s.
Yeah, way before he was a prosecutor.
Yeah. And it's interesting too that the house of Usher in the very first episode is facing, like, all the children have died. They're facing prosecution, and he immediately is inviting the prosecutor to come and have a conversation where he says, I'm going to confess everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of implied that he has a disease.
Yeah, yeah.
So given that, I love that right from the get-go, I feel like I'm watching the metaphorical and sort of physical crumbling of the house of Usher, the same way that Edgar Allan Poe described the physical and sort of horrific dilapidation of the Usher home and mansion.
I see.
So I thought that was really well done. And then inside of that is, what has that been doing to all of the characters? Like, they're all playing defense. They're all trying to, like, get rid of the EPA, get rid of the
and some of them,
story.
even the children, which all they're interested is in the will.
Yes.
Like, who's gonna be the head of the family once the
Roderick dies.
Roger dies, and they don't want to be written out. That why they're like every man and woman and person for themselves.
Yeah, and the only one so far that I kind of like is, I call him the drug dealer son, but I don't remember his name.
Yeah, and we don't know if he brutally murdered a cat.
Yeah, that was really disturbing.
That was on the third episode.
The third episode. And what I love is, so there's a character named, I think her name is Vernon. She plays kind of like the spirit of death.
Yeah, she does. It's interesting because it's the spirit of death, but in the third episode, she kind of like allures to, listen, it didn't have to be like this. You could have gone sleeping in peace, meaning she could have lasted till old age.
Yes.
But then she always gives them a choice.
She does. She's gives
like,
them an opportunity
to just
walk away.
To walk away, right? And live. But they don't know that they come from a point where, listen, I'm untouchable. We rule the world.
Well, it's interesting that she seems to find them right at a moment when they think that they're right on the cusp. Like, remember the scene where she's with Perry? She's on the bed, she's all sprawled out, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's excited. She gives him this speech about how wonderful the feeling is of almost. You're right on the cusp of making all of your dreams come true, and isn't that a delicious feeling? But what if you didn't do it? Like, you have an opportunity to stop it.
Just walk away.
Just walk away.
Yeah. And I mean, if of all his children, to me so far, he seemed like, not such a bad kid.
Perry?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he just did drugs and like to have orgies and have sex.
See, I just disagree.
Why?
Because the act of ignorance when you're in a position of power.
Yeah, he was extremely ignorant. That is true. And
he was ignorant in such a gluttonous, selfish way. Like, the thing is, like, what was he, 18, 20?
He was, I think, 18.
So, as an 18-year-old...
He met his father at 16. That's what they alluded.
That's right. And so they were like, he didn't have a chance because it was too...
He was still
too young. And so now he just... And he is, of all the children, has no sense of consequences or responsibility.
Or that anything is wrong. Like, they're talking about all these places that have harmed the environment, killed a lot of people.
He can't even hear it.
Yeah, and he's just, we have these places. This is
would be good for a party.
This will work for what I want to do, which, as I understand it so far, so once they come of age, he gives them a loan to start a business.
Right.
And he must, I guess, approve of this business because it's a business to further grow the Usher
empire.
The Usher empire, Usher family empire.
And I personally disagree with Perry's motivations. I really loathed listening to how he was thinking about the concept of, I want to create this it's so exclusive.
Right.
And
$20,000 entry fee.
right.
And then a membership.
And he was like the exclusive of the exclusive. Like and he describes it at one point like the trendiest, hottest celebrity is like having sex with so and so.
But then the sleazy, I think his sleazy part comes after, because okay, he likes to throw a party, but then you see that he says he's recording everything. The party and everything is good, but this is what will make millions.
Yes.
Kind of like a mob boss getting all the dirt on everybody and the rich and famous, so he can probably blackmail them later and do whatever he wants with it.
Yeah. Exactly. And I also think, so that interaction he had with his little minion people, like they all have minions.
They all have minions, right?
People that they treat less than human.
Yeah.
And at one point,
like servants, like slaves.
Like slaves. He at one point thinks that they've eaten his eggs that are some exotic freaking eggs, which are quail eggs. You can see they're quail eggs. Right. But he holds...
Could you imagine the people in the prop department? Listen, what type of eggs? I don't know. It's just these look good. They look quail eggs.
Like it's like, okay. The prop department could have at least like painted them. They look just like quail eggs. Black.
Black? I mean, did the eggs that he talked about were they a thing? Are they a thing?
I don't even remember the bird. I should have looked it up.
Bird.
I really should have looked it up because
Can you imagine they knew about eggs? That's just quail eggs. You've been duped. Right. You've been bamboozled. There's no fancy eggs.
Well, I don't like characters that have never experienced empathy. I have a hard time.
He had none.
No empathy. But I do have a survival tip.
Yeah, what's the survival tip here?
The survival tip is, it's very attractive to look up to people who are, I think, famous or wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like his minions, I think it is important to look at what you value inside as a guide, more so than what you see. I don't know if that really makes sense, but
I don't follow.
Well, somebody held a fork to this lady's neck and threatened to kill her, and her response was, "Oh my God, you had me going there." And I'm like, that's the end of the party. Like, that's it. I would just be done. I mean, I don't even know how I would get into that situation.
Right.
No. I mean, you have the best attitude about this, because I can sometimes get flustered. Like if I saw, like, I don't know, Jane Goodall, I would be like, "Oh my God, it's Jane Goodall."
I don't even know who that is.
Anyway.
to me, you'd be like, "Oh, look, it's Jane Goodall." I was like, okay, that's just the lady down the street,
Well,
I don't know.
But that's the thing. You don't hold any celebrity in high regard.
Yeah, I don't. They're just people. They're just good at what they do.
Yeah.
Or they're lucky enough to be in a place where they're good at what they do.
Well, Jane Goodall is an activist for gorillas.
Okay.
She's amazing.
There, you heard it here first.
You should look up her work. She does amazing stuff.
I never heard of her up until now. And probably after we stop, never think of her again. Unless we see a documentary or something that she's in.
Yeah, I would probably go like, "We're going to watch something cool." And you'd be like, "Another movie?"
A documentary. Yay. I mean, I like documentaries.
You love documentaries. Definitely not on gorillas.
I don't like them all that much because there's a lot of documentaries that I watch about how horrible things are. I was like,
oh, they're so sad.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to watch this. Let's just go to a horror movie.
Isn't that ironic?
Right?
We won't watch a documentary about how bad things are, but we'll watch a horror movie and everyone will die.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
But ironically, we're looking at the hope side of it because our podcast is about how to survive.
Yes, yes.
We're very hopeful people.
Yeah. But in this show, I really want all of them to die.
I know.
Yes, all of them. I'm happy in the front. Okay, that they're all dead.
So
now he's the only one that's left to die.
I know. Well, so episode 1, his mom is buried alive. She comes back to life and she just walks down the street and she kills the runner of that company.
Right.
who
He's so
supposedly,
distraught that he just lets her
right,
just choke him out.
choke him out.
Right?
I was
And then she
very
collapses.
impressed.
That's
And
what
she
I thought.
dies.
That's why I thought they just filmed it like she was an undead in the show.
Well,
Like
that's
because she attacked her son for some reason, and she looked all tattered. And I was like, okay, this is an undead.
well, they did that for a reason because that's part of the theme. The idea is while she's still alive, it's the concept of a decaying spirit, decaying body, decaying mind. You know, it's horrifying. You know, and however you take it, whether you think she's alive or dead at that point, it doesn't really matter because there's nothing more for her beyond revenge and fear. And then in episode 2, we see the path of Perry and his death.
Yes.
And we also see the temptation and the undoing of Frederick's wife.
Yes.
Yes. And
because Perry basically took her down with him.
Yes.
But she lived.
She did live. And then in episode 3...
And the death character, let's name it the death character, she gave her the, listen, you need to go now.
Go now.
But the difference is that she did the same thing with the security.
With the servants.
The servants and the security, and they didn't flinch. They just left. But she didn't do the same thing with her. She just told her,
go now.
She did not leave. She kind of like stayed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I want to know specifically what she said to them.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if we'll find out in later episodes.
And I like that you could see her on film. Like when they started dissecting the
she's
film,
not an ephemeral
creature
being that nobody can see. Like it lives inside where nobody could see it.
Nobody could see it.
Here, she can be seen. She can be recorded. She can be. There's pictures of her. There's recording of her.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting. In the first episode, which we haven't seen the whole part of that story. Usher and his sister go into a bar. And then she starts talking to them, and she says, this bar is outside time and space.
Yes, she does. And I didn't really understand that.
It could be that she's an Anunnaki.
Oh, that would be cool.
An extraterrestrial. Look it up. Anunnakis on YouTube. You'll go through a whole...
You're going to go into a whole winding thing.
Rabbit hole about aliens. Anunnakis.
Anunnaki.
Yeah, that's a thing.
I don't think she's an Anunnaki.
Okay.
I do love that she seems to represent all of the themes that are taking down characters in Edgar Allan Poe's story. She seems to represent consequence, fear, insanity. So every single time she appears, I sort of started to see that the kids right before they die are making very poor decisions. They've made very poor. It's almost like it was an insane move for Perry to connect some pipes to stuff without checking it. We were like,
listen, just look at the water, just touch the water,
just anything.
Yeah.
And it's insane for the other lady to go to a research facility with apes, and because of what?
And not any ape.
Not any ape.
They were
chimpanzees.
Chimpanzees.
The most.
There's a lot of stories.
Oh my God.
Chimpanzees. Oh no, he's the best. He's been with this lady his whole life, and then they just mob people to death.
I can't because they're so human. They're 98% genetic humans that we treat like animals. Could you imagine having your consciousness?
This would be a good survival tip.
Yeah.
Never be in a room with a chimpanzee.
Right. I mean, I am very wary of chimpanzees. I have seen them in zoos, and I choose to move on because I don't want the chimp to get upset with me.
Right. Just follows you.
Right.
Remembers you.
Do you remember there was a story about a couple of guys who were harassing a tiger at a zoo? They started throwing stuff at it.
I've heard that. Is that a real story?
That is a real story. And the tiger jumped out of the cage, right? Saw them and didn't
looked for them. Didn't hurt
touch anyone. Stalked them and killed them.
Yeah.
And that was it. He was like, all right, well, I did my thing.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Of course, they had to kill that tiger.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So
kind of like what the guy did in the Totally Killer.
Yeah.
Well, We're not going to talk about it in case you haven't seen it. Good movie.
Yeah, it is a good movie. We won't talk about it, but it is an episode that we did previously. Mm-hmm. So if you want to see Totally Killer on Amazon Prime, go check it out and then check out our episode on Totally Killer.
Yes, here on YouTube or wherever you're listening to your podcast.
Yes. Plug.
Yeah, plug our shameless plug.
But what I'm thinking is like, you know, I don't trust chimpanzees because I have so much respect for them and their life. I'm just like, listen, we have different goals, right? And I'm good. Like, you're very strong.
And in this part, this was the last scene in the third episode.
Yes.
Which the death character, so she's talking to her. She showed her, like, at this point, looks like her sister did the operation, but then you're not sure if it was on her, because when she goes to take the picture, like, she says, okay, the hell with it, I'm already going to die. She says that she's going to die, and, you know, she's like, I've had my fill. She goes to take the picture, and in the camera, you see a chimpanzee. You don't see the death character. So the death character can choose how cameras see her.
Yes. And I love in that scene that she was talking from the perspective of a chimpanzee. Mm. You humans are so... And I thought at first that she was speaking from the perspective of some otherworldly entity who was observing, an Anunnaki who was observing humans. But as we progress, I realize, no, she's speaking from the animal's perspective. Mm. And so we have to go into survival. Okay. There's two things. We can go specific, and then we can go conceptual. Okay. Specific, how do you survive the attack from a chimp? They talked about this when that woman was attacked.
I have no idea. I mean, because they maul everything. Yes. I mean, they can eat your bone like it's in celery.
Yeah.
How do you survive? I have no idea. You play dead?
Yes, basically. You play dead and you try and ball yourself up as much as possible. You can't fight. There's no fighting.
They're like beasts that have tremendous strength.
Oh my God! I just thought of something so weird. Mm. So I write like short stories, and I just thought of this really weird thing where, what if any survival tip that we try to create, like, comes back and like haunts us, where like we then have to survive it using the tips that we create.
Oh,
that would be horrific.
I don't think so. That would be like, okay, now you put your tips to the test, the ultimate test.
I don't want to be attacked by a chimpanzee.
Yeah, but that would be like how to survive, but not how to not be harmed.
No, that's true.
Because this is a completely different thing.
It's
like, yeah, you survive, but you have no hands, no feet, no face, no nose, no eyes, no ears. You're done.
It's true. The other thing is...
I'd rather not survive.
I would rather... Yeah. The other thing is, like, it would be a really good horror movie if it's a horror movie about a podcast like ours, where somebody then makes us live all of those survival techniques,
right?
And like puts us in those scenarios, like
let's put it to the test,
like in Saw, you know?
Right? Yeah, that'd be interesting.
That'd be awful. Why did I say that on camera?
I think it would be interesting.
I mean, I
would live through it. Let's go. Let's do it. You know, I got my little pocket knife. You know, everyday carry knife. You know.
You got Milo by your side. Look at how ready he is.
He's probably gonna poop himself. The first monster he's gonna go like, and poop is gonna come out.
Right.
That's the first thing he's gonna do.
Poor booby.
Now he's just tired. He's like, listen, these recordings are way too late.
Yeah.
All I want to do is sleep, and you people just keep me awake.
Right.
At least you pet me, human.
Right. And it's so funny. So sometimes we leave him in his bed, but he has to come with us.
Right. He can't stay alone.
He can't.
Today we brought his little toy.
Yeah, we brought his little toy.
He's
a good boy. What's your little toy?
Here's your little toy, Milo. I was like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
There you go. You got your little toy.
So the second way of surviving is conceptually. And that would be surviving. I think that it would behoove you to read Edgar Allen Poe's short story and also watch the show.
Okay.
And the reason why we do that is, I think, so that you understand some of the concepts. I think the concept here is insanity, fear.
Okay.
And I think surviving fear has more to do.
Yeah, but fear because see the thing is they not him because he's already has the fear because he has a terminal illness. So we know he's gonna die. But the children they fear nothing because they're
Well,
on top of the world. They're part of this elite family that has this empire. What do they have to fear? Nothing.
no, their whole life is about fear. So just think about each character, every single thing they do is because they're afraid of losing power.
Of losing the power which comes from the ultimate power giver, which is
their father.
Their father.
But it's also about
and technically, their aunt too.
Their aunt, but their own success. Like everything they do is just around fear.
To get power.
To get power to keep it.
Fear and respect, I say it's the same thing.
Well, I say it isn't because one of them gives you peace. The other one gives you turmoil.
Okay.
And ultimately leads to your demise. And I think fear in this case has
real life.
What? What are you talking about? If you lived your life in fear, if anyone lives your life in just constantly afraid, reactive at everything.
Plugging a separate podcast that we have no affiliation with. We just like to listen to it. It's called Behind the Bastards.
Oh, it's such a good podcast.
Just listen to that podcast and you know that everything you're saying right now, not in real life.
See, I'm talking more about the ability to be well. The ability to, like, if everything you do is from fear, you're never going to be able to truly live. I don't think these people, I haven't seen any of them enjoy a single moment of their life.
The Perry, was it Perry?
Perry, the kid who died.
Yeah, the kid. He was enjoying the hell out of that moment.
Well, I guess it was semi-pleasurable, but it was pleasurable in the moment. But the reason why he was doing it was to try and earn anything he could from his father. Yeah. It had nothing to do with what he really wanted. And, I just think being that disconnected with yourself, you're going to start to act out of fear. And I think that that's very unhealthy.
Okay.
So I think the way that you overcome that and the way that you might combat that is simply to try and know yourself more and then act accordingly.
Yeah. What's up with one of his sons or his daughter, where which we haven't gone into that story yet, but she's a cuck. Right? And she enjoys to be cuckolded.
Okay.
It's so weird.
For people who don't know what this is, she is a person who gets sexual pleasure from watching her husband just have a normal dinner and subsequent sex with a prostitute.
They allude to the sex that's something that's going to happen later. But right now it's just
a romantic dinner about how was your day?
That is the most weird form of cuckery I've ever seen.
But what's interesting. So the first time that you see this, it's all about supposedly her doppelganger. So she is the prostitute.
Yeah.
And it was all about him asking, how was your day? I'm going to do everything you want. But then when the angel of death, the death lady, comes in and replaces the prostitute, she turns the tables a little and she starts asking, well, how was your day to the husband?
He was like, what?
Oh my God. He suddenly started to discuss it and they started to have a real connection.
Right.
And she had, and then the wife was like, am I feeling
do I like this?
And then she decided that she did. And I thought that dynamic was very interesting. And I think ultimately that's going to end up getting her killed.
You think?
I think my theory, because we haven't seen it yet.
It's up to the third episode.
Yes. So my theory is that's going to get her killed because her husband's going to want to be appreciated more in his life.
And you think they're going to have kind of like a...
I think he's going to kill her.
And he's going to kill her?
I think he's going to kill her. Okay. Or something to that effect. Because I don't know how he's putting up with it. That how could you put up with having this weird false connection with a prostitute and never actually connecting emotionally with your wife?
Yeah. I mean, asterisk, there's no kink shaming here. If you like being cuckolded, that's your deal.
That's your deal.
Just how they framed it in this particular scenes in this show, it's a little weird.
It is a little weird. But that was very, I think as a person who I really appreciate connection on a lot of different levels, I felt so weirded out and confused by that like weird thing. I was like, what a wonderful romantic evening to experience with your partner. That then suddenly she's replacing herself
with a random person.
I wonder if it's because she doesn't feel capable of experiencing those emotions for herself.
Yeah, but why sexual gratification?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that psychological like phenomenon. I want to do research on it for a next episode because I want to be able to understand
The
how
kink?
to yeah, how does one where does it come from? What is the motivation? Is there an anxiety? Is there
just people that just like to be cuddled.
I mean, I understand that it could just come from pleasure, but remember the point of the show is about degradation and decay.
Lady, yeah.
Right. In this particular case, anything that you see from these people ultimately has to do with fear or insanity or something to do with breaking down of the self. So I think it's got to come from something that we don't see yet. So that's what I want to understand.
I guess we'll see. So far, every episode has ended in a hook.
Yes.
They always end in this hook. We're like, oh no, you think you want to go to sleep, but you want to watch the next episode.
Oh, can you talk about right? Can we talk about the graphics at the end? It almost blasts us in the face.
Right? Yeah. It ends as like, bam, here it is.
Dark screen, bright white letters. Right. And I'm like...
The fall of the House of Usher.
Right? With the size of our television, I was like, Jesus Christ.
Right. A projector.
Right?
There's a lot of TV at the projector.
So, I gotta say, I had a really hard time because I was like, it's too late. We can't watch another episode. Right. And he said, are you sure you want to stop? I'm like, yes, we will. But
even though we're going to finish recording this, we're going to go watch the next three probably.
We're probably going to go watch it because it's so good.
So summarizing, so far, it engages you. The first episode is a little slow, then it picks up on the second one. And so far, what I feel like, in every episode, we're going to see one of the deaths of one of his children.
Yes, I think so as well. And I'm very interested in, I hope we dive more into the prosecutor's story. I love that actor. I think he does such a great job. Yeah. And what we haven't touched on yet, too, is the jump scares themselves.
Right? There's a lot of them.
And
everyone.
Every single jump scare, I scream at the top of my lungs.
Right? Milo wakes up. I'm like, Jesus, I'm more scared of your screams than the actual, depiction of horror and jump scares.
I know. And so I can't help it. Like, I get really, really startled.
Yeah.
And like in the beginning of our relationship, when I started to do this, you'd be like, God dang it. What? Just calm down. Yeah, because you don't understand why I scream. And I'm like, okay. Like everything's fine.
We're good.
And then another jump scare. I'm like, oh my
God. This is Jesus.
Just kidding.
Oh my God. Yeah, Milo like that. I was like, what's happening?
It's okay, Booby. We're just talking. So I'm going to have to try and figure that out. But can we also talk about the makeup for 2 seconds of these undead people?
Yeah, it's pretty good. And practical. There's practical. I think there's some VFX that... There are a lot of practical effects that are really pretty cool.
And the bokeh effect with the evil people, like the undead people in the background.
Yeah, like when the prosecutor, it's
my mother's standing behind you.
Like, I ain't looking back there. Or every time he kind of like flinches and we see the really blurry background, kind of like a bokeh effect with the camera. Yeah. That's pretty creepy.
It is super creepy.
I just wish there was a little bit more of that.
I do too.
It's not all that creepy enough.
I do too, but
it doesn't. They do it when it serves the purpose.
When it serves the purpose.
Yeah.
I love the explanation of the prosecutor when he says, "My mother is standing right behind you," and he doesn't just say, "I'm not going to turn around because you're trying to scare me." No. He goes into this long.
That is what power people do. They want to feel in control. I ain't giving you no power.
The emotional discussions in this movie are on point. Of this show are on point. They, at very unusual turns, what I wouldn't expect it, explain concepts in the movie or in the show that I'm just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Like
and
that.
So far to this point, he has not taking a sip of that fancy
Of that fancy whiskey?
that he said
Really?
one glass, it's probably worth 3 times your yearly salary. Up to this point, we haven't seen him take a sip. He's just holding the glass.
Really?
Yeah, he's just holding the glass. He hasn't touched it.
I wonder, do you think it's poison?
I don't think it's poison because he's drinking the same thing.
Yeah,
I don't think
but
he
he's
doesn't look.
gonna die.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like the type. You know, he already lost. When he's telling these stories, all his children are dead. He doesn't seem like the guy that's gonna.
He doesn't seem like he's willing to sacrifice anything.
And all these people want is to kind of like be remembered and live forever. What more remembrance than saying everything so that this prosecutor can, have it all on tape or on a recording.
True. Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's how I see it. But what do you think?
Yes.
How would you survive the fall of the House of Usher?
The first 3 episodes.
The first 3 episodes, of course. Yes.
Don't talk about the next episodes in the comments.
Yes. If you are going to talk, clearly state spoilers ahead.
Right. Because remember, we love spoiler alerts.
Yes. Spoiler alerts are important.
So if you like this podcast, we do really encourage you to subscribe and like with our little thumbs up.
Right, and share, do all that good stuff,
Be sure to click on the little icon bell because this month we're doing 1 episode every single day.
That is correct.
Until the end of October, where we culminate in Halloween.
That we do.
Yes. And remember to send us your tips and tricks, and if you have movies or possibly another miniseries that you would like us to cover, please send it to us.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to be vigilant, be safe, and be the last one standing.
Always.